Right, you're back with us here on Connect the World. We are covering a climate in crisis on the heels of a new major United Nations report that has dire warnings about the impact of climate change on the world's future, but also provides potential solutions. Now, it says the preservation of and restoration of forests could reverse the buildup of CO2 in the atmosphere. The reason? Trees draw down atmospheric carbon and store it in the soil. But protections have to be put in place for those vital forests, and sometimes that takes a David versus Goliath style fight. And that is just what happened when one Amazonian tribe in Ecuador battled the government to protect the rainforest and their home. Called the lungs of the earth, the Amazon is the world's largest rainforest and one of the most biologically diverse places on the planet. Its 6 million square kilometres of forest are a key buffer against increasing levels of carbon in our atmosphere. But this precious natural resource has long been under threat. Now one tribe is fighting back.
We came here for our right to live. We haven't come here to negotiate with the government. We came here to get the government to respect our jungle, our land. It's our home.
Nemonte Nenkemo is a leader of the Waorani, one of a number of indigenous tribes that still call the rainforest home. The Ecuadorian government has sought to expand oil production in the region to boost an ailing economy, a move that threatens the tribal way of life. In response, the Waorani people have taken to the streets and courts of Ecuador to prevent the government selling their ancestral lands to oil companies. With the help of an NGO called Amazon Frontlines, the tribe won a landmark case in April, which campaigners say protects 500,000 acres of rainforest. That ruling was upheld against an appeal by the Ministries of Environment and Energy, a second victory for Nemonte and her tribe.
We have won the victory, and this means that our children and future generations are going to live healthy, free and happy.
Their story is a rare glimmer of hope in the fight to save the Amazon and could pave the way for other tribes to take similar action. Ecuadorian officials were not available for comment. In July, they said in a statement,
"It is important to highlight that this ruling does not affect in any way the oil production in our country. We confirm our commitment to develop our natural resources with the highest social and environmental standards, respecting the community's rights in the key project areas."
The only message I can give to the other countries is to have a soul, to defend our jungle for future generations, because we are not children, and it's our children who benefit.
While the Waorani lands are protected for now, other parts of the Amazon are at increasing risk. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has undone decades of rainforest protections, causing deforestation in Brazil to accelerate in June to over 1.5 football fields every minute, and leading researchers to fear the Amazon is at a dangerous tipping point. Unless drastic action is taken, Nemonte and tribes like hers may be the last ones standing in defence of this priceless natural resource. Well, we are going to take you now to the Amazon for a live report from the leader of the NGO that helped that tribe win what is a landmark case. Mitch Anderson is the CEO of the Amazon Frontlines, a non-profit organisation that he helped found 4 years ago, joining us via Skype from Lago Agrio in Ecuador. Sir, you have said, and thank you, the fate of the Amazon is in their hands, referring to these indigenous communities in the Amazon. Tell us just what is at stake for these communities.
Well, their life is at stake. Indigenous peoples across the Amazon are the owners of 25% of the entire basin. That's 10 times the size of California. And, their very physical, cultural, and spiritual survival is on the line. They've been protecting these lands for thousands of years, swimming alone upstream against innumerable waves of resource extraction. And, now here we are in the 21st century with scientific reports coming out showing that our global economic system is driving us to planetary collapse. And it's premised on the extraction of natural resources. And for indigenous peoples across the Amazon, such as the Guarani, the issue is very clear. It's about a way of life. It's about a way of life premised on the destruction of their lands versus their way of life, which is, about harmony, about connection to the forest, and about survival.
Mitch, just how significant is this case that we've just reported on in the broader scheme of things?
Well, hopefully the Guarani victory, coupled with, what's happening in Brazil with Bolsonaro, will spark a shift in how the world conceives of the urgent threats facing the Amazon and the big question of how to save the Amazon rainforest. Because, what I was just saying is indigenous peoples are the customary owners of huge tracts of forest, and it's some of the most best protected and healthy forest on the planet, and it's under threat. And indigenous peoples across the basin need the resources, the networks, and the capacities, and the backing of the international community so they can continue to protect their lands and their way of life against what is amounting to an all-out assault on their territories, and ultimately is going to lead to, the destruction of their forests and our climate.
Let's talk about Brazil's president. He is a climate change denier, much like the US President Donald Trump. The far-right leader says recent reports of a spike in deforestation are in bad faith and erode the image of Brazil. Your response, and how do you counter comment like that?
Yeah, well, he's not living in the Amazon rainforest. He's living in the capital city, and he's living in essentially a racist and violent bubble. Indigenous peoples are living in the forest. They've never poisoned their fishing holes. They never clear cut their lands because they live in them, because it's their pharmacy, it's their market, it's their home. And what we're seeing here in the upper Amazon, as well as in Brazil, is what's to be expected when, we have a global economic system that's premised on the destruction of, ecosystems around the world, and also the marginalization of the people who are living closest to the land. And in this case, in the Amazon, it's the indigenous people who have the strongest ties to the land, to the rivers, and they have the most to offer in terms of how to protect it, in the face of massive climate change and all of the threats that we're seeing here.
So Mitch, let's not sort of, underestimate just how big a challenge it is taking on big corporations and governments. It's a huge challenge. And often these cases do not have positive results. I just want your sense of what was different in the case that you fought so hard with the Guarani people for.
Yeah, no, the Guarani people are, they're a historic, hunter-harvester tribe, legendary warriors. They've been protecting, an area larger than Yellowstone National Park, 2.5 million acres, against innumerable waves of resource extraction over centuries. And, they knew that the Ecuadorian government, cash-strapped, indebted to China, wanted to exploit their land and drill for oil there. And they knew what they had to do. They knew that they had to show the world that their land is more than just a patch of green waiting to be exploited for oil. Their land is their home. It has thousands of creeks. It's their hunting grounds. It's the reproductive grounds for animals. It's the home of immense biodiversity. It's their spiritual birthplace. And they wanted to protect it. And so they created a map, a territorial map, to show the world what their territory means to them. And that digital interactive map was able to really capture the imagination of people across Ecuador, the upper Amazon, and the world to say, look, the Guarani people are fighting for their lives against oil drilling, against this mighty industry. And, we need to back them. And the case is very familiar, across the Amazon. What happens is you have governments and industries coming in and essentially trampling on indigenous people's internationally recognized rights to free, prior, and informed consent, to essentially decide what happened on their lands. And in this case, the Ecuadorian government came in, didn't really even consult with the Guarani people, tried to trick them, showed up for a half hour in various community visits, and then proceeded to auction off their land to the oil industry. And the Guarani people, working with my organization, Amazon Frontlines, we basically, took the Ecuadorian government to court, And we won.
And won.
I think.
And one.
And I think.
Yep.
Won.
I've got to leave it there. Listen, it's been fantastic speaking to you. We've learned so much. I'm going to take a very short break at this point. Got to pay for the show. Thank you. We'll have you back.